WJR.
January 2020, the start of an election year, the Democrats decided to impeach Donald Trump. January 2024, the start of another election year, Donald Trump is scheduled to go to trial on 34 felony counts. Does the timing at all have anything to do with both years being the beginning of presidential election years, or is it just coincidence? 800-859-0957. 800-859-0WJR. What are the political ramifications here, Kevin? I mean, if this is indeed a political prosecution by a Democratic DA, will it in fact benefit the Democrats politically?
Yeah, we're going to find out. So far, talk of the pending charges, has only boosted Donald Trump's polling numbers to win the primary and become the Republican candidate for president in 2024. Do actual charges change that at all? Do they chip away at his numbers, or do they improve his numbers more? And that's just Republicans. What happens with independents? Does some of this make people maybe think they're going to stay home if we're talking about a trial in January of 2024? Let's bring in Dave Dulio, director of the Center for Civic Engagement and political science professor at Oakland University. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, guys. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's start first with Donald Trump, how he did last night. He is he's a criminal defendant right now, but he's also a candidate for president in 2024. How did you think he did last night when he finally was able to address the public?
Yeah, I think both of those elements were present in what I'll describe as a very Trumpian speech, right? It was defiant. It was wandering at times. It was also a campaign speech, right? I mean, he not only talked about the charges against him and his views on those, but he mentioned President Biden a handful of times. So I think this is a great example of, I think, what we're going to see over the next many months, which is an intertwining of Trump's legal issues and his campaign for the GOP nomination.
Well, he really has no choice but to try and turn this into a positive, turn these charges into a rally call, not only for Republicans, but for independents and maybe all Americans, to try and put a stop to what he clearly thinks is a political prosecution and the weaponization of the legal system. What does he have to do to be successful in that strategy?
Not much, frankly. I think we've seen the start of this already in the last week or so, right? You mentioned his polling numbers. He has widened his lead over Governor DeSantis in Florida in terms of the campaign for the nomination. And we should be clear, right? DeSantis isn't an announced candidate, but everybody knows he's running for president. That lead has widened. As Republicans rally to Donald Trump, he's raised a bunch of money for his campaign. I think that you're seeing some real political benefit come to the Trump campaign from these charges, and I think that's only likely to continue.
Some say that, we just had a caller who said the same thing, that this is just distracting from Joe Biden, who is himself very vulnerable as a candidate. And you just said that Trump maybe doesn't have to do a whole lot to show that this is a politically motivated investigation. Should Trump, in his messaging, should he push away from that, continuing to go down the litany of charges against him, and really start to focus a lot more on Joe Biden and his policies, how he believes has hurt America, and what his policies will do to help this country?
Well, I think at some point he's got to talk at a policy level, right? He needs to either remind voters of successes that he thinks he had during his time in office, or draw contrasts with what he would do differently from the current president. And on that, it's interesting, but I think it's telling that the White House and Democrats really all over are staying pretty silent, right? They are they're not engaging on this, and I think that they think they see some benefit as well.
It's interesting, yeah. I think both parties are kind of waiting to see what happens with the support they receive. Donald Trump has raised about $8 million since news of this indictment broke. He spoke last night. I think it's an energized base that he has, but there's been a number of never-Trumpers who have also supported the former president in this particular instance. Is this going to potentially attract more of those never-Trumpers to maybe change their mind, or maybe even some independents to support Donald Trump's cause?
I think on the Republican side, I think that the politics there are very different than with the independents, and maybe we can come back to that. But I think you're on the money, and I think that this is the most telling part of, and maybe the most important part of how people are looking at this prosecution. Right? You've got, as you mentioned, never-Trumpers, a lot of folks who are no allies of Trump, not necessarily coming to his defense, but certainly questioning the nature of the charges. Folks like Mitt Romney, who said that yesterday I saw he had a statement about how he doesn't think Trump's fit for office, but he thinks the charges are bogus. I'm paraphrasing there, of course. And some similar comments by folks like Peter Meyer here in Michigan, Justin Amash in Michigan, two former congressmen who are, as I said, no friends of Trump. And there are others out there, right? I think that is really interesting to see how that plays with support for the former president in this campaign.
The media, much of the media, stopped covering Donald Trump recently, and Joe Biden, he's got the White House, he's got the ability to make the media cover him, and Donald Trump had kind of lost that. They kind of stopped covering him, but now he's center stage again. Is it possible that Alvin Bragg did Donald Trump a favor by giving him center stage again, where the media, and I think all media, has to cover him now?
Well, I think all we have to do is go back to 2015 and 2016 and think about how Trump so effectively used earned media to help him wage his campaign. And we're right back at that point where he's the king of earned media now. And if you just look at the coverage yesterday afternoon and evening, CNN and MSNBC all had changed the nature of their programming to be all about Trump, which is what it was for 4 or 5 years prior when he was at his heights.
Right. Part of me thinks that Donald Trump loves this. I think he's angry about the prosecution against him, but the coverage he's receiving, maybe he actually enjoys this. It is to his benefit in some degree, at least for publicity purposes. Do you think, though, if Donald Trump had never run for president ever, would these investigations have ever taken place?
I think that's a great question. I think, given that it seems that all of the charges yesterday are eventually going to tie back to campaign finance laws at the federal level, I think the answer is no, because he wouldn't have been in the position to have campaign finance laws that he had to follow if he'd never run.
Interesting. Yeah, good point there. Appreciate it so much, as always. Dave Dulio, Director of the Center for Civic Engagement and Political Science Professor at Oakland University. Always appreciate it, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, your calls are coming up next. Stay right there. We see you. We're going to get to you. 800-859-0957. 800-859-0WG.